Meeting of the London Board of Selectmen to order. Nancy Rollins is not here this evening because she's continuing to take some time away for bereavement. So Janet and I will carry on the agenda this evening. I guess the first item up, Ken, Jimmy, John, you're up.
We're up.
Talk about ARPA funds. Do you mind standing up? We have to, for recording this, we need to get you at the microphone, all that happy stuff.
So you know I'm Ken Jennings. I'm not chairman of the board. I am one of the commissioners. Jimmy's chairman, John's here also. I'm here to ask a couple questions. That's all.
Go for it.
Because I believe...
Nice job, Will. I believe that we had talked with you folks about ARPA funds and hadn't really had any information as to whether any of that was going to be allocated to the precinct or not. There was some conversation at one of our commissioners' meetings. We all spoke to Rhonda, who runs our office now. I believe she called Kim. And I'm not quite sure where we are with that. I thought I'd come and ask the question, find out where we are. And great.
Right. So I guess the question here, the Selectmen have approved 25% of the ARPA funds, which is a little over $100,000. Rhonda had called me to ask when the check was coming. So I guess the question now is, do we want to have the precinct pay a bill or give us a bill to have some backup for the money that we're giving? I think the Selectmen have directed or asked that it be used just for the Main Street replacement project. And so I guess I asked Rhonda when those expenses would start, and she thought...
So back up for 1 second. That wasn't what she told me. So okay. She told me that she thought that she had understood that the monies would be better used for water exploration. No,
I told her that I asked about that because that was on your list of
so that was a warrant article this year. The scope of services is being laid out by the Underwood right now.
Yep.
And they will dive into that as soon as they can.
So that could be one thing that the town could pay for that if the town wanted. So if you wanted money immediately, then that could be one thing. And I think you also had the $87,000 for the engineering that you already paid.
That's almost done.
Right. So that could be a bill that the town pays there. Or you could wait until the actual main replacement happens. It's really up to the Selectmen. It's just, I think the question is the transfer of money. Just when will that be?
Okay, so I tell you what, we're going to continue on our little horse, getting stuff done. And as we pay bills, we will copy you on what it's lined out to, which warrant article, and what we paid. And, however you want to deal with that, great. If we get the money, great. And if we don't get the money, not so great. But if that's okay with you, I don't have any problem. I mean, we're currently doing these projects. The engineering we hope to have by December. You probably saw him out here surveying all summer long. And so the surveying was done. We've paid for that. And we are waiting to see what they come up with. The project's not going to take right off tomorrow. There are still some serious supply chain issues, one of them being pipe. And pipe right now, if I pick up the phone tomorrow and order the pipe, it's 9 months before I see it. So, we're going to get our ducks in line and put out RFPs out and see what we can get. If the economy bails a little bit, we might end up with more people interested. And we'll probably shortlist the project for people that we know that can handle the job efficiently and according to the standards that we have. So if that's okay and acceptable, we don't have a problem submitting copies of what we've paid as we pay it. And if you choose to allocate money to that, great. We'll put it in the kitty. Because those articles, the article to look for more water we had anticipated grant money, like we always do, and we never get it. And we wrote up the grant application, sent it in, and got information back from the state that out of 141 projects in the state, we ranked 139. So we made some adjustments as to how our rates and taxes were calculated, sent that in. Good news, we moved up to 137. So we're not seeing any money from that. And you talk with the people at DES and they don't understand it. So I don't know, I give up on that stuff. We can only do what we can do. So, great if this money can go to some of the water infrastructure, thank you. Thank you from the precinct. But I just wanted to get an understanding of where we were, because I was getting different comment,
The ARPA
Rhonda
funds,
wasn't-
though, could be used for the study also. If you wanted to do that immediately, the ARPA funds that the selectmen have
As soon as
contributed-
we sign the contract with Underwood, we will go ahead and tell them to go ahead and do the work. And as they start chewing off little pieces of it, we get billings accordingly. And we'll send copies of that. That's fine. The scope of that's been completed, and we're just waiting to get the proposal for the actual cost back, which will be the contract, and we've already discussed it. We're going to sign it right away. Just have them get going.
Yeah, the point from us is we just need backup showing what the money was spent for.
Not a problem.
So that if we get audited, we can show that the 100,000 was used for the water precinct for eligible expenses, which all of those are.
As we pay stuff and line it out to each warrant, you'll get copies of that and of the checks, and whatever you can do, great.
Kim, just for the record on the recording, what's 25%?
It's 101,000 and
Some
some
change.
cents. Yeah.
Okay. I just think, since we have the recording now, it's good to have that on there. Janet, anything?
So I didn't need my wallet tonight to bring it.
No.
Okay, I didn't think so.
All we need is paperwork.
We got that.
That's what happens everywhere, right?
We got that. So,
Keep drilling, keep the pumps going.
I'm sorry?
Keep drilling, keep the pumps going.
We're
Keep the
not
water
drilling,
flowing.
but we're still pumping water, yeah. As I said before, that we met, just so you probably know, I'll tell you right now, we met with Twin Pines this week at our meeting, and met with the engineering firm that's doing the hospital project. The hospital project is substantially larger than what they came in for in 2019. Water has increased dramatically, so we're re-looking at that, because we never got an amended application when they changed what they were doing there, and what they're doing has changed the scope of what they need quite a bit. So, we'll see how that goes. That's in the engineer's hands too. But,
Jimmy, yeah.
Do you need copies of our warrant articles and
No.
minutes?
No, we've got all that.
No?
Just the invoice that covers.
just the money stuff.
Just the invoice that covers the check.
Invoice?
Right.
We do invoices.
That's all I needed.
Great.
So, I just thought
Okay.
I'd come up and ask, it's not that far.
Thank you. Anybody in the audience have any questions for the water commissioners while they're here?
Ken, you had said previously that since the middle school moved out of town, that we certainly had greater capacity, not as much usage as we did formerly. And with the,
10 years ago.
okay, so,
Right.
all right. What have you seen the increase in? I mean, can
Well,
you give me
there
a
hasn't been a
percentage
ton
of
of
what it's
increase.
been?
These two projects are dramatic. I mean, these are huge projects. I mean, the hospital project's more than the college. The
Okay.
largest user.
Okay.
Just, there it is. And how long had the hospital talked about doing something? Drag their feet. It's been 25 years they've been talking about doing something out there.
Right.
Some level of something. And, you can't plan on maybe. You can plan on a lot of the good things that have happened in the precinct. There's a lot of large tracts of land have come off the books. So Mesa, Buckland, that's gone.
Right.
That's nice. And, the majority of the precinct itself is pretty much built up. If you're going to, but, as I said before, and I'm not being critical, the zoning changes in commercial add another stress to what can happen to the amount of water. It almost doubles it in the commercial zone. Now, not that every piece of property in the commercial zone is going to double the amount of water that they use, but they have that ability now with the new zoning.
Okay.
Yes,
Thank you.
I believe it went from 10 to 5, so that's, that gives you a lot more potential in that zone. So, we're going to address it the best we can, and You know, we're going to, you can't take and approve something if you don't feel comfortable that there's an adequate amount of water there to supply it, because all that does is then put pressure on the other people in the precinct. And that's not right either. So, you know, Colby Point was anticipated to last 30 years. I mean, when you build something, you don't look out 60 years, you look out 30 years, and that's still a pretty good stretch. And, you know, we've done well with Colby Point. It's been since 1995. That went online in 95. So we're getting very close to 30 years. And a lot of the positive things, as I said, in the precinct that happened were great. And you take those with a grain of salt and say, well, that's good. It gives us more longevity for the point. So now you're going to get this added demand potentially. And, you know, as we told both of them, we'll give you what we have, but some of it may be premature. And they get that. You know, we did talk to Twin Pines a little bit about wells, their own public water supply. You know, and then afterwards we talked a little bit, maybe we provide the fire protection, and they get their drinking water through, you know, potable water through wells. So it didn't sound like a stretch for them, because it sounds like they've done this in other towns where they don't have the infrastructure that they need. And they're into all kinds of, you know, green energy and low savings on this. I mean, there's quite a bit of stuff that they presented, but they're not ready to give us any engineering plans yet.
Right, yeah.
They're fishing.
Well, they haven't come to the planning board either, so
No, but I think they're coming.
I think they are too.
That's what I heard.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Okay, thank you.
great.
John, anything?
All right. Thank you very much. More questions, you know where I am, just over the county line.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Okay, at 6:30, we're sitting down with the Budget Committee to continue the budget discussions, but in between, we'll see if we can get through the rest of the agenda. Are there any public comments on things that are not on our agenda this evening? John? Please, John, because we're recording, please come up to the microphone and identify yourself.
I'm John Ellis. The question I have is on Bunker Road. What's the status of the speed signs or giving out speed tickets, or the resolution for that situation?
We're in the process of getting the quotes now.
Getting the,
Quotes.
We're in the process of getting that ordered.
for the signage and the speed signs and all. So we're going to move ahead with hopefully resolving those issues once we get the new speed signs.
Well, the speed signs themselves will solve speeding issues, but that's the part that's tasked with it the last.
Right, but at least they would make people aware of the fact that you're speeding, and it might help save one life or one dog. The other thing, Bill, what's the status on the property? I'm going to call it the Newport property, and then I've read about the continuum property that's being considered. Where are we with that?
Again, I'll let the chief continue to talk.
I guess I'll get up now. I don't want to. And we are recording, so you want to record, right?
So the ask of us from one of the last meetings was to go and tour the properties, and so I did that earlier this week with Lieutenant Keith and with Adam Ricker. And so I'll be putting together a memo for Kim on what our thoughts and feelings are on both of the pieces of property, I suppose, the Newport Road and the County Road side. But we did go out and walk it earlier this week.
So the answer, John, is work is going on. Thank you. Anybody else have anything they want to raise? Okay, old business? Oops, sorry.
Sorry.
I'm sorry, I didn't see you.
Hi, my name is Heather Perigo. I'm new and I'm terrified, so I'm sorry. I don't speak very well in front of a whole lot of people that are really important. So I I think it's really important for the community. I just got out of a recreation department meeting with a few people here, and I just really wanted to say thank you to Chief Cobb. I think the chief of police and the fire chief came together with the recreation department to save Halloween, which I know sounds super dramatic, but there's a lot of kids here. I really get scared talking to people, sorry. There's a lot of kids here that love Halloween, and this is such a special town. And I don't have an important last name or anything. I'm just kind of a person who lives here. But I really wanted to say for the record that we really appreciate how everybody came together. And I want to make sure that the selectmen know and the town knows that this community can pull together and be a good resource, not just with tax dollars, but with volunteers, our time, our own resources, our own creativity, and our own ability to help solve problems. So please, when something like this happens, please communicate with the people, because we can help. And it's our town to help you guys run in any way you can, but we're here to support you, and we really, really appreciate the fun little things that we get to do because we are a smaller town. So I just wanted to thank the rec department, Mr. Kidder, thank you, and Chief Cobb, thank you for being solution-oriented. There's a whole lot of like really technical questions that I could really dork out on that I won't. But again, thank you for coming together and pulling it together as a community.
Thank you, Heather.
Is now the best time to speak to Halloween, or is it on the agenda? I don't know.
Halloween is not on the agenda, but so this would be a great time to speak, yes.
A quick moment.
Sure.
Largely, I just want to echo that. Matt McClay. Matt McClay is my name, yeah. Thank you for adjusting and hearing the town and making it happen, Chief Cobb, Chief Lyon. I think that would have been a real shame for closing Main Street to go down, to stop and not be shut down. Also, speaking to the timing, I don't really know the appropriate way for people to put in their 2 cents of when we should celebrate Halloween. I think I talked to a lot of people having kids in sports and all that around here, and I don't know anyone, well, I shouldn't say that. I met someone tonight that was in support of having it not on Halloween. But from people I talked to anyway, and it seems that the kids and many parents would love to have it on Halloween. And not be switching around days and trying to guess what's easy for people. And maybe some way for us to know how to speak to that or put in our 2 cents would be wonderful. I guess it's the rec department that makes the decision. But very thankful for closing down Main Street. I hope that doesn't go away. Thank you. So, thank you.
Anybody else? John, okay.
What's the status?
Hey, don't wait till you get to the mic.
What's the status of hiring a full-time rec department person as good as Putnam has been?
Kim?
We are accepting applications now for the position.
And what would be the deadline for that decision to be made?
Next Friday.
Great. So it's soon. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, John. Anybody else? Going? Gone, okay. Old business, Kim, do you have any old business? Do you want to bring us up to date on where you stand with the lawyers and appraisers and so on?
Yep, I'll be speaking with the town council tomorrow. I expect the purchase and sale agreement to be finished tomorrow, and I'm awaiting word back from the appraisal folks and the engineers for the phase 1 environmental study.
Okay, great. Thank you. Any other old business? Janet, anything? No. New business, Kim, keep going, you're on a roll.
We have
Merrimack
our
County tax bill?
Yes, we have our bill, $3,325,550. Oh, I'm sorry, that was this year's, 2021 was $3,325,555. It's up to $3,346,334. So of the 27 towns in Merrimack County, we're the third highest payer to Merrimack County. And that's based on valuation and population.
I mean, I think it's important for everybody who worries about taxes to realize what a large chunk of our taxes go to support the county, principally the sheriff's department, the jail, and the nursing home. And we get services from all of those, but we barely spend any time talking about them, but they also hit the tax rate. Any questions about Merrimack County? Periodically, I think we have somebody from Merrimack County comes and visits. The sheriff usually comes once a year, and so on.
Yep, and the selectmen, a couple of years ago, you attended
Down
their
there.
meeting. Yep.
Okay, your report, Kim, while you're up.
I'm still here. Okay, I will report on the Whipple Hall 2022 project committee meeting. I attended that today. They finalized the scope of work summary that they will be speaking with 2 construction management firms next week to come up with a recommendation as to who we should hire for that project. The transfer station hauling fees, our 3-year contract is up in January 1st, so we will be getting a new contract, and the rates are expected to increase potentially significantly, like 40%, possibly. It has not changed in 6 years, so this will be the first increase, which makes the work of the Waste Reduction Committee particularly important, given that if we have increased hauling fees, we certainly want to reduce the waste that we send to Berlin, and enforcing the sticker, the transfer station sticker, to make sure that only New London trash is going in there, so we'll continue on that. You also all got a copy of the state's solid waste management plan. That goes to that issue as well. And the compost pilot program that the Waste Reduction Committee is trying to get people to participate has picked up some steam, so they've gotten quite a few applications, so it looks like that pilot program will work. Sewer rates were set last week, and in the good news department, our percentage of payment to the Sunapee wastewater treatment plant is down to 66.47%. Last year, or this current year, it was 70.53%, and that's directly related to the hard work of the wastewater staff, Sam Clark and Chris Roberts, who have found areas of infiltration and have fixed them. So the water that infiltrates into our sewer pipes and goes directly to the wastewater treatment plant, and we end up, that's part of our percentage of usage. So that's good work. The auditors will be here next week, so Lynn will be very busy. We've already talked about Halloween, so I'm glad everybody got the word on that. That was a lot of work to try and make it as safe as possible, and from what I understand, especially from the people here tonight, that people are happy with the changes. So we'll watch that, and I think after this Halloween, we'll get together with various stakeholders and see how it went, and to make sure that next year the plans are set in advance. So. And finally, the MS 434, you all have a copy of it. Lynn worked on the estimated revenues, and she increased the revenues about $189,000 from what was estimated during the budget process. And that's the result of, as we get revenues in and get more information, we make adjustments so that it's more accurate. And that document is used for tax rate setting purposes. And tax rate setting purpose, probably end of October. Yeah. They don't put us as high up as the calendar year people, with the January 1st tax bills. They have to get their bills out earlier, but, so we'll get to that. That's all I have.
Janet, any questions for Kim?
Nope.
Hope you had a good vacation. We missed you last week, but...
I mean, it went so well without me. I mean, it feels like... Well done.
Well, Lynn was doing a great job, so... Thank you. Okay, on to the committee. Any questions for Kim? Anybody? Okay. On to the committee reports. Janet? Nothing? You just took care of waste reduction and Whipple Hall, so...
Oh, sorry to take your thunder on that.
There's no thunder to be taken. I would recommend the state's waste management plan, 10-year plan, that's now available on the website. It's going to be posted on our website, too. It's an interesting document, and already controversial because some folks in the state don't think enough is being done, but we have some major, major hurdles to get across in order to reduce the amount of landfill that we use and to make our environment cleaner. And as a committee that I'm working with is very, very active in this area, and I'm delighted to hear you've got that many more applicants for the trial period on the composting. That'll be great.
Can you elaborate just a little bit more?
Elaborate a little bit more.
What it is, yeah, I'm missing.
What would,
I'm the only one.
Matt, elaborate on what? Composting?
Well, oh, okay, all right, I got it.
No, tell me, or the whole committee?
Yeah, with the committee you're working.
Okay, so a couple of months ago, the Selectmen appointed a 5-person committee to look at waste reduction. And the word reduction was carefully used because in the waste world, it's not just managing the waste that's there, but hopefully creating less waste. And the committee in its early meetings decided to focus on 2 things. One is the composting of scraps from the table, and the second thing is on plastic recycling or diminishing the use of plastic. And for the last couple of meetings, they have been focused principally on the composting angle of this, and with Bob Harrington's help, have structured a 15-family pilot study for the next 3 to 4 months to see how much composting is brought to the site where it's going to be deposited, working with an outside party to pick it up, and seeing how it works at the transfer station in terms of making sure that we don't increase the workload on the transfer station staff. And so that's what's going on. They're going to start their pilot, I think, October 25th now, Bob, is the new date, and let it run for 3 or 4 months, and they'll report periodically. I think they're coming here to report on what they're doing at the end of the month. And on the plastic side of things, there's a lot of discussion going on about how we can be more efficient in our recycling of plastics and educating people about what plastics can be recycled and what plastics can't be recycled. So if you'd like more information from them, you'll be here, I know, at the end of the month, so you'll hear from them.
Thank you.
Bob, anything else you would add to that? Anything else you would add to what they're up to?
We actually got a couple cans at the transfer station now, and the process they're going to do is they're actually going to keep track of it by weighing it, and we'll see what we're actually pulling out of the waste stream, which will be a small amount, but we can get a general idea where we're going to be at.
I mean, ultimately, the question, obviously, with the pilot is, how do you take it to scale? And what's involved, in all of the people that we've talked to around the state say, start small, figure out what it is you're trying to do, and then scale it up with data. So, anything else? We've still got 2 more minutes for the rest of the budget committee to show up, so. Yep. So minutes, Kim, on the minutes, we're behind in terms of getting hard copy of minutes to the selectmen. I've not seen them. And I think we're back 3 or 4 meetings on other meetings also, but I think we ought to wait till Nancy's back so that we can all do that at one time. But the availability of the videos means anybody really wants to know what went on will know. But I think we're probably got all of August and now September, all of September to do too, so we are behind on the minutes. Okay, so we've got a little bit more time, so we're going to keep going here on the upcoming meetings. Janet, there's been some discussion, I think, with Kim about not having a meeting next week on the 13th and rolling forward the discussion with the Budget Committee on capital reserves and debt and the CIP until the 27th. I'm okay with that. Are you?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Kim, are you okay with that? Okay, then for the record, the Budget Committee, we will not meet next week on the 20th. I mean on the 13th. The 20th, we never were scheduled to meet, so after tonight, we will meet on the next meeting will be on the 27th. So on that, I've talked my way into 6:30, and we'll begin the meeting with the Budget Committee. And tonight we have Public Safety, and first up is Chief Cobb to go through, first of all, the police budget, and then second of all, the dispatch budget. And she tells me that on a couple of items she may mix the two because the same explanation applies to both. Take it away, Chief.
Okay.
We're on page 8, incidentally, for those of us that follow through the numbers once we get to the individual items.
So I'll just review some of the highlights that you'll see in the police budget, and then we can go through line by line. If that's the prerogative of the board, we can do it that way. Some of the decreases that you'll see in the police budget include part-time officer wages, computer license and fees, travel and meals, and investigation supplies. Some of the increases you'll see in the police budget, certainly in addition to wages, but the areas that I control essentially in terms of the line items are shift differential, telephone, computer support, new cruiser, conferences and training, general equipment, computer replacement, gas, K-9. And in particular, I wanted to bring your attention to a new line item that I've created that we'll talk about, which is accreditation. So I guess if we want to start at the top in terms of full-time officer and administrative assistant wages, there is no change planned for the amount of full-time police officers and administrative assistant for fiscal year '24. The part-time officer wages, I decreased to $20,000. As you'll see in the budget over the past few years, if you're looking at the part-time officer wages line item, we haven't used that very much, but again, something to keep in mind in a few areas in the budget is that part-time officer wages, we would use that quite a bit for events, special events like hospital days, and sometimes those things just didn't occur over the past couple of years. So the part-time officer wages were decreased in this budget. The overtime wages, if you recall, a couple of years ago, I had combined overtime and the training wages, and so those are going to be level funded. I'm requesting in the amount of $50,000. The shift differential is one area that you'll see that I have asked for an increase in. It is an increase of $3,000, give or take. And the reason for this increase is when shift differential was reinstituted in fiscal year 2017, this is one of those things that applies to both police and dispatch. The police officers and the dispatchers were working traditionally 8-hour shifts. So as it stands right now, we pay a shift differential of $1 an hour for 8 hours of continuous work between the hours at the time it was 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. Well, over the years, as our shifts have changed in terms of the time of day, we started offering different shifts to kind of keep the employees happy and to be competitive with other departments. The dispatchers had gone to a different schedule first, which incorporated 8 and 12-hour shifts. And within the last couple of years, the officers also transitioned to 10 and 12-hour shifts. So they're not working traditionally 8-hour shifts anymore. So the schedules that we have now allow for more flexibility, and the employees, I think, really enjoy working those. They've worked well for us. They enjoy having, the 12-hour shifts as opposed to the 8s. Coverage of those open shifts is sometimes difficult. Sometimes people have to come in at midnight and work midnight to 6 a.m. to cover an open shift, because usually their hours of work are 6 p. to 6 a, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. So
I don't think this is going to last long.
okay. So what was I saying? Splitting the shift in half. So working those partial shifts is pretty difficult, and you have to get up in the middle of the night to come in, and sometimes the coverage of those can be difficult. And again, this applies for both police and for dispatch. So sometimes our sleep patterns fluctuate. It can influence our home life, our overall physical health when we're working those midnight shifts. And so as it is now, when a person works a 12-hour shift, they're paid for 8 hours of that with a shift differential, but 4 hours of that is not shift differential. but they're working the whole 12-hour shift anyway. So that's why I'm asking for an expansion of the shift differential hours here. So I'm asking for it to be expanded and funded for just that $1 an hour for the overnight hours worked between 6 p.m. and 6 a.m. and 6 hours of continuous work to cover those partial shifts, essentially. So that's something that you'll see, like I said, in both the police and in the dispatch budget. The telephone line item you'll see increased. The reason, excuse me, yes?
Why don't we stop, Chief, at about every 10 lines and see if there's
Sure.
questions?
Right.
I'll just sort of monitor where logical places are. Janet, do you have any questions in the first 10 lines down through retirement?
No.
You should take credit, Emily, for having reduced the retirement expense.
Yes,
Thanks to the state.
really hard at that one.
Any budget committee, any questions on the wage-related issues here? John?
What's the cost for the shift differential total for the new budget?
For the police, I am asking for it to be increased to $5,940, and that's an increase from $2,912, I believe.
Yep.
And this is to cover that extra 4 hours on a 12-hour shift?
No, it's not to cover the shifts, it's to pay the employees a differential for having to work the overnight midnight hours.
The differential is,
$1 an hour extra.
but it's paid from hour 9, 10, 11, 12?
Currently, it's paid from, for an 8-hour continuous work period from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. And so somebody that works a 6-hour partial shift from midnight to 6 isn't eligible for that overtime, or that, shift differential. So I think it's only fair to offer that person a shift differential who's getting up in the middle of the night to come in and cover a shift.
Right, but you're already offering it for 8 hours, is that correct?
Yes, so I'm looking to expand it to do a 6-hour continuous work period, so to make it more, I'm going to pay more money for the shift differential between the hours of 6 p.m. and 6 a.m.
For that 12-hour period?
Yes, for the 12-hour period. $3,000 for the police. It's a little bit different for dispatch.
But the total would be 3,000 increase?
The total increase for the police is an increase of $3,020, which I think I calculated as 0.02% of the entire town budget.
Okay, other questions, Budget Committee, on the wage part of things, wage and benefits? Okay, Chief, go ahead.
Okay.
So I'll interrupt you just periodically to...
Sure,
So we
yep.
don't have a whole couple of pages to...
Absolutely. So the telephone, I guess I shouldn't skip over all the rest of those line items. Those are all given to me through Lynn. She does those calculations all the way through the flex spending admin fee. So I'm certainly willing to entertain questions on those, but I don't have any other real knowledge. Lynn gives me all those numbers. So that brings us to telephone. The reason for that increase that you'll see is that our monthly bill increased, and we also needed to increase our internet upload speed to meet the needs of our body and dash cameras. That should hopefully be coming this fall. I'm waiting to hear back from the state that we have all the signatures we need, and then I can officially order the materials. But we needed to increase our upload speed to comply with those. So that's the reason for that increase. Computer license and fees, that decreased a very small amount. That's because we put something that was more appropriately categorized in the computer support line item. So you'll see that there is an increase in computer support. And again, this helps pay for our computer and IT needs. It includes, which is VC3, which is our computer company. Includes our Office 365, and we did work with VC3, Heidi Dunlap, our administrative assistant, and I. We worked with VC3 to come up with whatever the increases would be for the next fiscal year. So that's why those numbers have increased. Dry cleaning services, I did ask for level funding at $100. We don't use that very much, but when we do, we really need it. We use it for things like the blankets that we have down in the cells. Occasionally, we'll wash some of our uniforms there, and sometimes like the bigger, heavier coats that we might wear. Vehicle maintenance, I asked for level funding at $14,000. We do have the two new chargers that are up and running and operational, but we are fanatic about staying on top of oil changes, tire rotations, brakes, all those types of things, tires. So I haven't asked for an increase in that. New cruiser, if you recall again from the last two cruisers that we purchased, we did not have any money set aside in fiscal year '23 for a new cruiser. The reason for this increase to $70,000 is that this will be the next item or next cruiser up for replacement is the chief's vehicle, which will be a command vehicle. And so the estimate for a police package of a Tahoe as of the end of August was $55,000. The cost of vehicles has certainly gone up considerably, and the remainder of that would be to upfit it, and I based that on the cost to upfit the sedans that we just had. It might not be as much because I don't intend to have a cage in the back of that Tahoe, that command vehicle, but still those parts are expensive, so that's the reason for that request.
Why don't we stop there, just because they cover everything, get some questions.
Sure.
Janet, do you have any? Anybody, budget committee, any questions about John? So budget committee, any questions on it? John?
Chief, when we met with you at our subcommittee, you mentioned that we're really concerned about taxpayers and employee pay this year and the high inflation rate and so forth. And we asked for your help as to what reductions or things could be put on hold for maybe a year while we sort out the effects of inflation. And I believe the new cruiser was one of the things.
Well, I took a look at everything again, and the Dodge Durango that the chief that I currently drive has 70,000 miles on it. And so what I would anticipate for fiscal year '25 is perhaps a replacement of some of the other patrol cars as well, some of the other cruisers. So I don't want to continue to put off replacing the chief's vehicle for too many years, because then I think we'll continue to get behind the 8 ball, and one year it's going to be a really, really big ask if we continue to put off replacing cruisers as we need them.
This might be the year for a big ask.
John, if you're going to have a dialogue with the chief, you need to come up here because of the recording.
I'm done.
Okay. I don't mean to cut you off, but I'm conscious of the fact that many people watch these videos and want to be able to hear us when we are dialoguing. That's why I have to remember to turn my mic on, too.
I didn't realize I was on TV.
You're famous now, Mr. Whipple.
Anything else on that? John?
Yeah, is there any way to combine some of the services that, I'm on IT now, any way to combine any of the services that the DC3 are providing with the town and what we're using in the town to lower that cost?
We already do that. VC3 provides all of the IT services for the entire town, so part of this cost is a shared cost among all town departments.
Okay, it was BC3?
V as in Victor.
V, sorry.
V, yeah, T, yeah.
Sorry. Also on the cruiser, the $70,000 that you're setting aside for, is that for 2025?
No, that's for fiscal year 2024. That would be for a 2023 cruiser.
Okay, and have we thought about looking at electric at all?
I have, but we just don't have the infrastructure for that yet.
Okay, would that be a line item that could be continued to be considered in the years?
I am always looking to review and analyze that. I had a lengthy discussion with a gentleman from Lebanon PD.
Yes.
Because they've done quite a bit of work up there, they've done quite a bit of work more so than we have here, and they're still not quite ready for electric vehicles, but it's always on the table.
Right. Tell me about you had mentioned the telephone increase in expenses there. What has caused that increase?
Our
Versus-
telephone bill has increased, and it also helps pay for the cell phones that we have assigned to the department. And additionally, we needed to increase our internet upload speed, which is through TDS, to accommodate the needs of our body cameras and dashboard cameras that we'll be getting this fall.
Right. The usage of the phones, has that increased? Well, if you,
We got a new
maybe I'm wrong. Like if you have 5 officers, has the use of those 5 phones that they have increased for a reason, which would increase the cost
sure.
of those
I
lines?
understand.
I'm not sure if the increase on a cell phone is based on usage. It's a
Right.
fee, you pay monthly, you get
Right.
unlimited.
Right. Are we going over that limit?
Not that I'm aware of, no. This is just our standard fees that we have for the cell phones we have assigned to the department.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, John. Anybody else? Okay, I think next, Chief, we can probably get all the way down through the equipment item, the big equipment item, and then we'll stop again.
Okay, yes, yep. So I think I am on radio repair and replacement. I do want to note that on the sheets, I'm not sure of the date of your sheets, but it appears as though in fiscal year '22, we only spent $372 in radio repair and replacement, but we actually have some money that's encumbered for the new portables in the amount of $8,200. So we have been spending radio repair and replacement. So if that was a question on anyone's mind, which is one of the reasons why I asked for level funding in radio repair and replacement again this year. Other professional services is the services we receive from the Merrimack County Attorney's Office. They handle the prosecution of our cases, everything from misdemeanor and above. We'll handle some of our more minor violation level offenses like speed trials, stop sign trials if we want pretrial conferences, but we consult with the Merrimack County Attorney's Office quite a bit. So, and their price had gone up last year by 15%, so that's why it's requested at level funded, because it's the same as when they increased it from last year. Firearm repair and replacement, I did ask for level funding there of $500. It helps to replace, repair some of the parts on the guns that break, the cleaning supplies that we need, the targets that we need. I'm going to talk quite a bit about pistols here in a few minutes, but that one was one that I had asked for level funding on. PD equipment lease and rentals, this one went up by a whopping $10 because our contract increased just a little bit. So although it was only $10, I thought it appropriate to be as accurate as I could. So that one pays for our copy machine, and it's a monthly fee. But again, it's part of a lease program. Travel and meals, I requested a decrease of $1,000 to the amount of $4,000 because we're just not traveling as much to some of the places to receive our training as far away anymore. But I will say that the next line down, conferences and training, I asked for an increase to $10,000 from $9,000, and that's going to be in part to the cost of the trainings, while they are more local, have increased. Trainings that used to be $200-300, I'm seeing now are $500-600-700. So, and also the cost of ammunition has gone up quite a bit, and our ammunition comes out of our conferences and training line item. So that's the increase for that. Dues and subscriptions, I asked for level funding at $3,800. That covers dues and subscriptions, I suppose, to various organizations that we belong to, and it also helps cover the subscription to the Central New Hampshire Special Operations Unit, of which we have 2 of our officers are members. One is an operator and another is a negotiator, so that helps to pay for that. The accreditation, you'll see this is a new line item, and I asked for funding in the amount of $2,000. And I mentioned this, I think, in my budget presentation in the fall of 2020, so I guess it would have been for fiscal year 2022. I'm requesting this in anticipation of the New Hampshire Law Enforcement Accreditation Program being operational by fiscal year '24. This was one of the big things that was talked about with the Lee Act Commission a couple of years ago, and I would anticipate the police department participating in it. This cost is based on some anticipated costs that were shared with New Hampshire Law Enforcement over the summer at the New Hampshire Chiefs of Police trade show. They had a presentation on it there. It's a voluntary process, accreditation, and so you don't have to participate if you don't want to, but if you do, you would look to meet an established set of professional standards. It involves having a set of written directives, which we have now already, so I anticipate we would probably already meet some of the accreditation standards that they would put out. But it's an ongoing internal assessment of our policies, practices. It keeps up with best practices in the profession, and it would involve an annual review of an independent outside subject matter expert, and continuing to provide the great service that I think we do. Again, the Lee Act Commission had discussed it at length a couple of years ago and concluded that agencies would be strongly encouraged to pursue accreditation. So it's made available. This program is tailored really to the smaller New Hampshire law enforcement agencies, but it's so that New London PD could obtain accreditation as easily as Manchester PD. So it's really for the smaller police departments to be able to meet that at a reasonable cost. Because if you go to some of the other outside accreditation programs, they're quite costly. So this is one way that New Hampshire is trying to meet that standard. I'm an advocate for accreditation. I think it's helpful. At my former agency, I lived through an accreditation. We weren't accredited when I got there, and I went through the whole process as I worked there. And so I'm definitely an advocate for it, and I think it would be a beneficial thing for the New London Police Department. So that's the reason for that increase, or that request being a new line item. Anything? Okay. Okay. So general equipment, so you'll see a large increase here, and the vast majority of this is going to be a request for new pistols. But quickly, I want to touch on the other things that this also covers. It covers our tasers, our radars, our door security pads, replacement of any appliances that we need, a shredder, a refrigerator, anything else like that we might need. But certainly, by and large, the big ask and the big request is for pistols. So our duty pistols is what we wear when we're in uniform, such as I am now, and our off-duty pistols is what we would wear when we're not in uniform for things like court, training, plainclothes assignments, or actually being off-duty. Our duty pistols were purchased in 2015, and they are starting to show their age. More and more parts are having to be replaced on them, and as we continue to we put thousands of rounds through our firearms every year, they're starting to require more maintenance. We currently carry a Smith & Wesson M&P 45mm pistol with regular iron sights. Generally speaking, we'll put about 1,000 rounds annually through our pistols when we're training with them, which means that these guns have seen at least 8,000 to 10,000 rounds, some more than others, as some officers train more often. We've been having the conversation about new pistols for quite a while now, for a couple of years. And so starting this spring, our firearms instructor started researching options for new pistols. He narrowed it down to 2 options, and then we had several members, including myself, go to the range and test them out. And we were unanimous in our decision to go with Glock pistols for both the duty and the off-duty pistols. One of the major changes, or some of them, I guess, to our handgun program that would happen with this funding request is the new make. Certainly we'd be going to Glocks instead of Smith & Wessons. A different caliber, we would be looking to go to a 9mm instead of a 45mm, and the addition of red dot sights on our pistols. We currently have red dot sights on our rifles. Having red dot sights on our pistols would help make more consistent our weapon systems, thereby increasing accuracy and confidence. There's a great deal of benefits to red dot sights. It allows the officer to focus on the target, not on their front sight necessarily. Allows, again, for greater accuracy. The target stays in focus when you're aimed at it, and it's not blurry, as is the case sometimes when shooting with iron sights, depending on how far away you are from your target. It allows the officer to keep both eyes open, which can prevent tunnel vision, allows for much greater situational awareness, and you're able to use your peripheral vision, able to keep the big picture. Because oftentimes when you're under stress and you're in an environment like that, you immediately get tunnel vision. And so sometimes, like for myself, I'm right-handed, but I'm left eye dominant, so sometimes that can get a little bit tricky trying to stay accurate. And I've had to work hard to overcome that. It's a single focus on the target, so you no longer have to focus on three things, being your target, the front sight, and the rear sight. It greatly improves the effective distance of a pistol due to it being easier to aim and it being much more accurate. It allows the officer to be further away from the target if the situation allows. In shooting, distance equals time, and time could equal better decision-making by the officer and better safety. Me personally, I was hitting a 5x8 steel target from 60 yards away consistently with the red dot on these pistols, which I would venture to say is something that I would have to work really hard on to do with iron sights. But it improves accuracy in aged eyes. Sometimes our eyes can start to deteriorate as we get up in age. And so a single red dot is easier to quickly acquire and aim with as opposed to the traditional iron sights. It's important to note that all of the pistols will still have the traditional iron sights as a backup, so if the red dot were to fail, and that's part of the training program that we'll have if we were to go to these red dots, is that you still need to be able to use your iron sights if your red dot sight was to fail. Much easier to acquire and aim during a low light or a no light shooting situation. And earlier this summer, we sent our firearms instructor, Officer Jeff Daly, to pistol-mounted optics instructor. So that allows him to teach fellow officers how to use pistols with optics as an instructor. So that's an important piece as well. The optic itself is extremely rugged, and it can be used to manipulate the pistol, which makes a huge difference when manipulating the pistol or using it with a single hand or your offhand as opposed to your strong hand. And again, it makes accuracy while single hand shooting much, much easier. So that's a brief overview on the red dot sights that we would be looking to go to with pistols. I just want to touch on the idea that we would look to change from 45 millimeter to 9 millimeter as well. Ammunition for 9 millimeter is less expensive than 45 millimeter ammunition. You will need more rounds because more rounds can fit in the magazine, but overall it is less expensive, a 9 millimeter round. I believe really that the red dot sights will become industry standard in law enforcement over the next several years. And given that we were looking to replace our pistols, I thought it was appropriate to look at this as a whole package as opposed to doing it piecemeal. There is a trade-in value for the pistols that we have now, so we would utilize that as much as we could in order to offset some portion of these costs. We have 15 of our pistols now. There is a warranty for the new pistols for normal wear and tear and through the first armorer's cycle, which is about 5 years or 5,000 rounds. But I would expect these pistols would last at least the next 5 to 10 years if this funding were approved. And again, the thought process for having us transition at the same time, both our duty and our off-duty pistols, is that so officers don't become accustomed to shooting a pistol one way and then having a pistol without red dot sights on other times. So there's a lot to unpack there.
So the off-duty is the one without the red dot?
No, sorry, the off-duty, they would both have red dots, and it's a little bit misleading, I suppose, to call it the off-duty. The duty weapon is what we carry when we're in uniform. Mm-hmm. The off-duty weapon is something that we would carry when we're going to court, when we're in plain clothes, when we're going to training, something when we're not in full duty uniform. It's a smaller gun.
Okay.
Sorry, I should have said that, I suppose, yeah. But I do recognize that this is a big ask, and going off of what Mr. Wilson said a few minutes ago, I recognize that this is a good deal of money, so I'm absolutely anticipating a good conversation here tonight about how we move forward.
So you said 15 pistols?
Yes. Well, we have 15 now. I think the quote that I have from our firearms instructor is for 16 Glocks. And the cost associated with that includes the pistol, the red dot sight, the weapon light that we have on these, the new holsters that we would have to have for it to fit in there, the magazine pouches, because again, we'd be going from 45 and a different brand to 9mm, the ammunition, and then the backup iron sights. So it's all encompassing. It includes everything from pistol to holster.
So I'm going to do a little arithmetic. There are 9 people on the force, and you only have 16 pistols?
Yes, so there are 9 full-time officers, and we have 5 part-time police officers as well. And it's always, we need to have some spare firearms if one were to go down, or heaven forbid, somebody was involved in a shooting. That gun would be taken from them, and we would reissue them a spare.
But I guess doesn't each officer have 2 pistols?
Oh, yes, yeah. So this would be for 16 duty pistols and 16 off-duty pistols. So this is, yes, this is all encompassing. That number is all encompassing.
So it's 32 pistols?
Yes.
Good, thank you. Just a minute, Lindsay. Janet? Okay, Lindsay, go ahead. See, John, she knows to go up here because, yeah.
I think it's more of just kind of accounting. Would it not be a better idea to keep those rather than general equipment, just for transparency's sake, and make firearm, repair and supplies with that budget, just so, you know.
Put it in a different line item, you mean, as opposed to general?
Yeah,
equipment?
because, I mean, it's a fairly large number, and so
Sure.
I think just for transparency's sake, it might be better to move it. And then that's really it. I have another question on those ARPA funds, but I don't think it's appropriate this question right now, so.
Yeah, we'll get to, come back, I'll make a note. Yeah. Other members of the Budget Committee want to talk to this? John, waiting for the Budget Committee first. You all are happy with what you've heard? Okay. Okay, John, go ahead. I'm sorry, John. Young John. Go ahead. I didn't see your hand go up.
No, I just want to reiterate what the chief said there, going back to the subcommittee meeting we had, that when we were looking for help for this year, that perhaps we could put this off for 1 year until we get a handle on how we're going to handle the inflationary aspect of things here. And she had suggested that as a possibility.
Yeah. Well, and in reviewing when these pistols that we currently have were purchased, which was 2015, and to put this off again for another year, I thought it would be an appropriate time to have the conversation now and to put it all forward. Yeah, I recognize it's a big ask. There's not a whole lot of other areas in both the police and the dispatch budget that I'm asking for significant increases. No new personnel this year in either area, so that would be the reason for this one. And I guess in terms of that, you know, the cruiser that we just talked about too, while we didn't spend that money last year, I think it was made very clear, I hope it was anyway, that is an ongoing cost that we should expect in the budget. So while it's a $70,000 number this year and there was 0 last year, it's because we had an opportunity to get 2 cruisers at the same time, which I think was the right move for the town to do. But I recognize it's a big ask.
Okay. Others? Now John Ellis, sorry.
So the 70,000 will be ongoing every year?
For the cruiser? No, that's just the purchase price, or the quote that I obtained for a Tahoe, which will replace the chief's vehicle and the cost to upfit that. Let's say in the fiscal year 25, I'm looking to replace the 2 Chargers instead. That'll be a different number, and of course, based on what the market is doing at the time.
7,000 would be a line item continuing.
New cruiser is always a line item. New cruiser is always a line item. It might not be 70,000.
Tell me, I want to go back to the 15% increase in legal fees. How many cases did we have in 2021 where we involved the legal?
I'm sorry, I don't have that number, but I can tell you that $11,040, if that's what it is indeed, is a very, very small price to pay for the service that we get from the county attorney's office. They are there to, they take our misdemeanor cases, and so for us to not use their services, I would probably have to hire an attorney and have that person on staff. So that's a small price to pay. That number hadn't increased for several years from the county attorney's office, and last year the commissioners decided for a 15% increase. So again, for the price that we pay and the value that we get, I think it's well worth its weight.
And is there a top-out number of cases that you would bring before them?
No, we don't, there's no cap.
1,000
There is no cap.
same, 11,000?
Yes,
Is that-
yes, yep.
Okay. And the, you want me to follow you a little? Not working. Also, I wanted to ask on the red dot, is this a laser, this red dot, is this a laser that points at someone and then you're accurately going to make sure you're...
It is an incredible way to be a lot more accurate, yes, as opposed to just using iron sights.
So it is a red dot laser?
Yes, yep, yep.
Okay, and is there a need for 3-2 all at once? I'm confused on the carry a day gun, I'll call it a day gun, and a night gun. Don't they both kill the same way? Couldn't you take someone out with either one?
Well, certainly we would be able to use both guns in a deadly force situation, yes.
Right.
But in terms of the duty pistol, which is again what we carry when we're working and we're in a
Right.
uniform like this, and the so-called off-duty, which is what we might carry to court if we're in a plainclothes capacity or if we're going to training. And some New London officers carry a duty all the time, a pistol all the time, no matter if they're working or not. And that's their prerogative. They're allowed to do that. So the request for all of these at once, you know, there's room for conversation there, I think, is if the town isn't willing to, or this isn't palatable enough for the town to look at this year, then perhaps, you know, if the town is willing to entertain the duty pistols, maybe we look at the off-duty pistols in another.
Right. What's the total budget for that? Because I don't have the big book.
For
Sorry.
that general equipment line item, it was $65,000.
Okay. And you had mentioned earlier that there's a number of officers that prefer to carry I'll call it the full-time duty weapon. How many do you have that prefer that?
Maybe about half, give or take. And I guess it depends on the situation they're going into. If they're going out doing an event with their family, they might not, or they may, for that very reason.
Right, understood. But if they prefer one or the other, and you get...
Well, it's not a matter of preference. They wouldn't be able to carry the off-duty firearm when they're working in uniform.
Right.
Another example of a person who might carry, again, and I'm sorry if that term is confusing, but the off-duty weapon is our detective. He works in a plainclothes capacity all the time. He might not carry the full-size Glock that we carry on duty. He might carry a smaller one because it's easier to conceal and easier, quite frankly, to wear with plainclothes.
Right. And is there a reason that he would need to carry both?
We wouldn't carry both at the same time.
Right. My understanding was you have a duty pistol and a non-duty pistol.
Yep, so if that person were to be in uniform, then yes, he would carry the duty pistol.
And is there anything preventing any of the officers from carrying the one all the time?
I don't know if I understand.
Why couldn't they?
I think what he's asking is why couldn't they just have the duty pistol?
Correct.
Oh, why off-duty pistols? Well, it's something that we offer, again, because they're smaller in frame, they're smaller in size, they're easier to wear when you're not wearing a full uniform. But that's just something that the town has, we've offered in the past. We have off-duty weapons right now, they're Rugers, and they're a lot smaller and easier to wear and to conceal. So that's something that the town has supported in the past.
Right. And so you would be able to phase these in? You wouldn't have to have the whole 65,000 this year?
Well, if we were going to have to break it up, I wouldn't break up the duty pistols. I wouldn't say these 4 officers get new duty pistols and these 4 don't. I would do all officers getting new duty pistols, and perhaps we could put off the off-duty ones for another budget cycle if that was what was most palatable for the town.
And what would that budget be for duty pistols?
The duty pistols is $26,672, give or take.
And then I would assume if the decision was made to go that route on the 26,000 versus the 65,000, they would still continue to carry their current non-red dot.
We would continue to carry this until that funding and the money was available, but I think it's important to make sure to just correct something you said there. It's not 65,000 total that we're asking for these pistols. That total is in the general equipment, which I think is maybe to Lindsay's point that it's a little bit confusing. So the total for the pistols that I'm asking for now is about $51,000.
Okay.
So if you break that out from that general equipment that I had at 65, we're at 14,000
Right, there's
for general
14 that
equipment.
goes into the rest
Yes,
of it.
yeah.
So basically, if it were decided to go with the duty pistols, it would be about half of that specific
Yes.
budget for duty, non-duty pistols.
Yep.
Okay. Does each officer, you mentioned 1,000 rounds, does each officer use 1,000 rounds a month, a week, a year?
Annually.
Annually? Okay. And would that would continue, but the cost, as I understand, would be lower because we're going to 9 millimeter?
Yes, 9mm ammunition is less expensive than 45.
Okay.
We do need more rounds because you can fit more rounds in a magazine for 9mm. They're literally a
Right.
smaller bullet.
Right.
But still, the overall cost of 9mm ammunition is
Would
less
be-
than 45 ammunition.
Would be less. And then how many times, and I don't know whether it's by the day, month, or week, or year, how many times does an officer pull out his duty?
Hopefully none.
I mean, what do we do now? Do we record how many times an officer actually pulls out his gun? And, I mean, how do we measure
Whenever
that?
an officer needs to use any level of force, whether it is drawing his firearm, his or her firearm, whether
Right.
it's using a taser, whether it's using an armbar takedown, anything above and beyond normal routine handcuffing procedures,
Right.
an officer must do a use of force report on.
Right, and do we record that?
Oh, yes.
And
We
how
have
many,
those.
how is that recorded? By the day, by the week, by the month? And
Well, whenever an officer uses force above and beyond normal handcuffing, they're required to do a report, but I don't have the use of force report numbers here tonight.
okay, but they're available
I could get those numbers, how
use
many
of
times
force
an officer had to use.
by an officer?
Right, keeping in mind that there's a lot of context that goes around a use of force. And so that's why we train, that's why we use skills such as our verbal communication skills. You know,
Well-
I can tell you that for 1 year in the city of Claremont, I had the most use of force reports. Do you think I used a lot of force on people? Hopefully you don't, but that's just the way the cookie crumbles. I mean, sometimes you have to use a measure of force when you're doing law enforcement, because at the end of the day, we're police officers and we have to keep people safe.
Right. But the use of force means not pulling out your
No, that's
red
not,
dot.
that's incorrect.
Is that right?
No, that is incorrect.
Is it the opposite?
No, I don't think that it's entirely accurate to say it that way. A use of force, if a person needs to use any force above and beyond normal handcuffing procedures, they need to do a use of force report.
John, in the interest
Okay.
of, we have a lot more to go tonight, if you would like to have a conversation with the chief on all of this, I'm sure she'd be happy to sit down with you. Lindsay?
Well, I do think there's some points to clarify though. before we
You want to come back up here,
Okay,
please?
I'll be so quick though.
You're very quick.
Very quick.
There's a standard of operations for police issued firearms, correct? Like,
We
Every-
issue firearms,
everybody
we have
does
to
too.
train with them, yes.
Right, but
Yep, we're trained
there's
in
an
use of
industry-
force in 627.5, the deadly force statute.
there's an industry standard that is two, a service and non-service.
Service and non-service.
Well, what you're saying is, you know, you have two different firearms.
Okay, yep, so sometimes, the course of fire that we have to use for our duty pistols is different than the off-duty pistols, yes.
Sure, but it's standard procedure
It's standardized through the police academy.
to issue 2 of these.
Not all departments do issue 2 of them.
Okay.
New London has always supported it in the past, and so
Okay.
that's why I'm requesting it now.
Well, and then, now I'm going to maybe use you as an example. I mean, you can barely fit in your chair with that huge thing, because I mean, so there is a definite, validity to wanting a smaller firearm when you're not on duty.
Yes.
And or
100%.
say our detective is going and having to talk to a child. I don't.
They're easier to conceal. The off-duty ones, again, are smaller. They're easier to conceal. They're easier to wear when you're not in a full-duty uniform.
Correct.
Yep.
I mean, I guess I'm a little chuffed that we're kind of asking you to validate how often you use a firearm. You still
Hopefully
need
never.
it.
Yes, that is a required piece of equipment, our firearms.
Melissa?
Melissa Lines, I think I have a quick question for you. As far as when you're training, you train with both guns?
Yes.
Okay. And it would be satisfactory to have one with a dot and one without a dot? I mean, do you use one more than the other?
It's definitely not my preference, because I wouldn't want officers to have to go back and forth, being very, very used to a red dot with their duty pistol, and then having to remember that they don't have a red dot on an off-duty pistol. So it wouldn't be my preference.
Thank you.
Thanks, Melissa. Anybody else on this? Okay. Lou, okay?
Well, it's not a question, it's a comment. Having been, having spent 22 in the military and several years in Homeland Security, and having had 2 assignments in which carrying a service revolver was indeed a part of the job, I will say, and I think, a red dot, number one, it will prevent any possible collateral damage. Number 2, you're asking an officer if they're half equipped, you're asking them to train twice for the same duty, because there are techniques that you employ when you train for a particular firearm, and if you have to maintain currency and maintain training and competence and the use of one type of weapon, really having, you're asking the individual, we already asked our police officers for a lot. I think the least we could do is to provide it to them. Thank you.
I appreciate that comment. I think there's a lot of validity in what you just said, because it reminded me when I went down to test out these pistols at the range, is that I drew differently, I aligned the pistol differently with the red dot, and so to go from a duty pistol where I draw a certain way, I have a stance a certain way, and I look down the barrel a certain way or look down the muzzle, it is going to be different to transition from one with a red dot to one that is without a red dot. So I would support, I guess, what Lou's statement was in terms of that.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Okay, you're in the home stretch, Chief.
Okay.
Right down at
At
the
least
bottom
for
of the
police.
page. Here we go.
All right. Well, the next one's a decrease, so hopefully that is investigation supplies, decreased to $2,000. And again, and with almost all of these items, I do take a look at what our 3-year averages are. And so this was one area that I felt we could sustain a decrease in, was investigation supplies. Office supplies, I asked for level funding there. Copier supplies, I asked for, I believe it's a pretty slight increase of $100, but that pays for our color photocopies. We asked for an increase in computer replacement, which is actually one that I'd like to talk about now. This is in part, or in partnership with VC3, and it's just replacing the computers that we have that are at the end of their life cycle, or will be by the time fiscal year '24 rolls around. So that would replace 6 computers in the police department, desktops. Gasoline, that is a big jump, and I can share how I arrived at that number. I looked for the calendar year 2021, we spent, or rather we used about 8,400 gallons of gas, and when I drew these numbers up, our price of gas was $4.39 a gallon. So that equates to $36,000 and change, so I rounded it to $37,000. Our September slips for gas, we paid between $3.50 and $3.90 a gallon, so that has gone down. If we wanted to work off of the $3.90 a gallon of gas, that would be $33,000. So, but again, I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know what gas is going to cost in, July of 2023. But that's how I arrived at that number for what it's worth. Reference materials, those are our law books. I requested an increase to $250 for that. Uniform and safety equipment, I asked for level funding there. We are replacing our ballistic vests as they expire. They expire every 5 years. The cost of a vest is about $1,000. And this is also just for literally the uniforms that we wear. New employee expense, I requested level funding at the amount of $5,000. Miscellaneous, again, level funding at $2,000. And canine, I did request an increase to $4,500. On the budget sheet, you'll see that we spent exactly $3,000, which I don't know how we managed to do that, but we spent exactly $3,000. We did use just over $1,200 out of the canine donation fund, and so as there is money available in that fund, I use that as much as we possibly can to try to offset the cost. But again, I can't count on there being donations in there, so I thought that $4,500 was an appropriate level to request for the canine. His insurance plan did increase 20% in the last year. Some of the medications that he takes has increased as well. So that would be the reason for the increase in canine. He is 7, I believe. 7. I think he was born in 2015. Yeah.
Janet, any questions for the chief, besides how old the dog is?
That's a fair question. Yeah.
Budget Committee, any questions on the remainder of the presentation? Anybody else? John, Ellis, anybody else? No? So it sounds to me like, Chief, the cruiser, command car, pistols, cost of gasoline are the three variables that I hear us talking about it. Am I accurate in that? Mm-hmm. John's nodding his head, okay. Mm-hmm. Lou?
Yes, Chief. For the weapons that you are, what would you call it, the obsolete weapons, are you going to access them? Can they be recycled? Can they be sold?
The ones that we have now, there's a trade-in value to those,
okay.
Yes, which I believe is I have that. The trade-in value estimations that we have is approximately $250 to $280 a piece for the current guns that we have. So again, that's something that we would use to offset the cost to the new pistols.
Emily, if you don't buy new pistols, are you going to increase the line item for repair?
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. I would request an increase for a total in firearm repair and supplies to $1,000 as opposed to $500.
Okay, I asked Emily beforehand, and she's a glutton for punishment, and she wants to continue right into the dispatch budget.
All settled in now.
Well,
Just keep going.
Jay,
I'm not getting out of this chair.
Jay, she's going to keep you waiting a little bit longer. She just wants to go while she's sitting there. So we're now on page 10, Budget Committee, under the bottom half of the page under dispatch. Actually, we're going to make you wait too, Lou. I'm sorry.
The dispatch budget is shorter and less than the police, so hopefully it might not be as long. Some of the highlights that you'll see in dispatch is a decrease in travel and meals, really for the same reasons that I decreased it in the police budget. Some of the increases you'll see in the dispatch budget are part-time wages, the overtime. Those were really the increases in accordance with our COLAs. The shift differential, again, which I think we talked about at length, but it applies, the same principles apply as I talked about when I was saying the police. Computer support, equipment repair and maintenance, which I'll explain, uniforms, a small amount, and miscellaneous, a small amount. So we can go through those now one by one. There's no change to the amount of full-time personnel requesting for fiscal year '24. The full-time position that was authorized last year is working very well, and we are at full staff in the dispatch center now. So the part-time wages, I have allowed for approximately 12 hours a week to be covered by a part-time dispatcher if need be. And again, that's an increase based on their wages. The overtime did increase, again, based on COLAs, and we have to account for some amount of overtime even with the new position. The shift differential, I can certainly go over again if you'd like me to, but again, the same argument applies. And then as we go down, those are, again, a lot of the numbers that Lynn gives me all the way through flex spending account. So that brings us to computer license and fees. I asked for level funding in that regard. Dispatch computer support, I did ask for an increase to $39,000. But again, as we've become more integrated with VC3, I think we're on a better footing with them in terms of what our IT needs are going to be for the fiscal years going forward. Dispatch radio repair, I did request level funding there. Equipment repair and maintenance, there is an increase in this one of $10,500. And the reason for that is that our service agreement has increased, as has the cost of some of our software that we use in the dispatch center. Also, what comes out of this line item is rental of the space on the Mount Kearsarge Tower, and so I added rental of space on the Mount Sunapee Tower in anticipation of our Phase 3 communications equipment, hopefully going up on Mount Sunapee. Additionally, we'll need a new battery upgrade with storage on Mount Kearsarge, so that accounts for the remainder of that increase in dispatch equipment repair and maintenance. Travel and meals, I decreased to $1,000. Again, a lot of the trainings, especially for dispatchers, they're offered online, so that's a good way for us to get our training in. Conferences and training, I did request level funding in the amount of $2,000. And as you'll see, for the past few years, those were really a lot of COVID years, unfortunately, but we have been steadily increasing our amount of training that we're sending the dispatchers to. So conferences and training, I requested level funding there. Dispatch new equipment, I did request level funding in that line item, level funding in office supplies as well. Uniforms, I requested a $200 increase to the amount of $1,700 to account for just the increase in clothing costs. And dispatch miscellaneous fees, I think I asked for a $50 increase there because some of the goods that we purchase out of there have gone up.
Okay, Janet, any questions for the chief on dispatch?
Emily, with regard to new equipment, what are we talking about? The $5,000.
The new equipment, so that will pay for things like the binders that we have in there, chairs. We have to have really industrial, sturdy chairs. We can't just get an office chair from Staples. So sometimes those office chairs are upwards of $1,000 because someone is sitting in there 24/7 and they have to be adjustable, et cetera. We have a big carousel full of the binders of the material that the dispatchers need in there, and then any other sort of new equipment that they might need. We had to get a new like mailbox slot at one point recently, so that type of new equipment that they need.
Okay, thank you.
Keyboards, any other things that they need.
Anything else, Janet? Budget Committee? Lindsay? I'm sorry. Back up to the microphone, please.
Okay.
It's good exercise.
Chief Cobb, we talked briefly about, you referenced the binders and the carousels and how kind of dated our actual dispatch system is. But these numbers don't reflect the replacement of that system, correct?
That is correct.
So, okay. And then on that note, and I'm not sure if I know what the proper terminology was, but there were the funds that the majority of them were supposed to go towards water precinct or some sort of water.
ARPA funds.
ARPA.
Yeah, the ARPA. But are there still funds left over that could be applied here that might actually take out some of these line items if we updated the dispatch system? And I don't know what that cost, but it seems like it's something that needs to be done pretty soon. Maybe not this year, but I hate to give you $1,000 for binders.
Yeah, the selectmen haven't committed 50% of the ARPA funds, which could be used in the police department.
Okay, and that was kind of what I was trying to figure out, if we could.
Yep, for the new dispatch software, basically our CAD, computer-aided dispatch software, and our records management system.
Okay, and so then some of these
That's not
dispatch
reflected in
equipment
this.
stuff would, like you wouldn't.
Yeah, if we didn't need to buy 24 new binders because it's all in this software, that's an example.
Okay, the binders are small, but that's a horrible system at this point anyway, but no, that's just kind of what I was wondering if.
Sure.
That's still in motion and a possibility so that some of these might not need to be addressed then if it's taken care of.
So that was your ARPA question?
Yeah,
It wasn't related to the water then?
Well, I couldn't remember when it came. I go to a lot of meetings. I knew that they requested that it went to a certain percentage.
Yeah.
Certain percentage
So
went to.
50%'s going to water and sewer, and 50% undetermined at this point.
I was just wondering where the undetermined thoughts were. Okay.
Other questions about the dispatch? John?
Yes, on two of the items, Chief, the dispatch equipment repair and maintenance, we're talking about replacement of the battery and a
Yes.
storage upgrade, replacement of items due to failure. And then on the other area, we're talking about replacement of headsets, monitors, and phones. Now, we put $34,000 a year into capital reserves for dispatch.
Yep.
I don't.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Okay, nope, sorry. I don't recall, and I should because I think I wrote the thing, but what the $34,000 is supposed to cover. It's supposed to cover replacement of equipment, I believe.
It's supposed to cover primarily the biggest cost associated with that would be the dispatch consoles themselves.
No, but it did get into all the equipment down next to the water pipe, and it got into replacement of the repeater on Kearsarge and all
We
this.
did use some of that dispatch capital reserve fund recently. Do you remember what it was for, Heidi?
That was, I believe, the cost when they went up on the mountain, when they determined.
There was a failure of one of the pieces of equipment. Yep, and so they replaced it while they were up there, and then we had to replace that.
So Kim, help me out here, but the $34,000 that the subscribing towns to the dispatch also contribute to that $34,000 each year. they don't contribute to these numbers right here. We do.
Yes, they contribute to the entire budget of the dispatch in the same way. So that 34,000 is added to this budget amount, and it's distributed a portion to each of the towns that are members.
Okay, but these are numbers that you're asking from us right now, from the town alone, right?
Yes, the town of New London's budget is prepared by the Budget Committee and the Selectmen, goes to town meeting. We use that number to bill the other towns. So the other towns will pay a portion of this budget, and they will also pay a portion of the 34,000 capital reserve payment.
Okay, so why are not things like the battery replacement and monitors and headsets taken out of the capital reserve?
I guess they could be. I mean, that would be a decision for the Selectmen or the Selectmen, really. It's generally, our thought was it is a bigger capital item. The capital reserve fund was for the bigger capital items. Replacement of consoles, something on the tower, big items. But certainly, the capital reserve account is for the dispatching center. So I suppose...
So I guess my point, and not to belabor all this, but in a year when we're, and I guess I am belaboring it, but in a year when I think inflation and what we're trying to do to help people out here, why are we not taking from capital reserve where we have the money instead of appropriating it outside of the capital reserve?
Well, John, that's two different questions then. One is, what do we use the capital reserves for? And should we be rethinking some of that for this year? And then the second question that I hear you asking is, are the other towns paying for part of this operating budget? And I think the answer to that is yes, through the fee, but you've got to go look at the revenue side of the
yeah, okay, but these are additional things that we got to do, these replacements. We are not, as I understanding, asking the other towns to up the ante that they pay each year. They do it based on the number of calls, don't they?
Yes, it's based on a 3-year average of calls.
Okay.
There is a flat user fee associated with each town, and I think that's one of the areas that we've talked about before that might be able to be
That's the $3,000? Yeah.
Yes.
That's peanuts, really. Okay, I guess my only point, Bill, is that I don't see why these items that I just talked about and the battery and so forth can't come out of the capital reserve and money that's already there.
Well, that might be true for any part of the expenditures of other departments also, right?
Yes, but these are replacement of equipment, and that's what this fund was set up for.
Again, I think it was originally intended for more capital items, which were larger in cost. Like if the dispatch consoles needed to be replaced, I mean, that's going to be hundreds of thousands of dollars. So I don't have a number on those, but that's what I believe, that's what I'm understanding that the dispatch capital reserve funds were created for. Because I think when the dispatch consoles failed the last time, the town was in a position that they weren't really extremely prepared to pay for that big bill, and that's why we've been putting that money aside for several years now.
So, John, when we get to Jay in a minute here, to the other chief, he has a bunch of capital reserve funds too, and you can ask him the same question if he has anything as to why he's not proposing to use those rather than the operating budget.
Well,
because he has similar number of similar.
Sure. Okay. I think I've made my point, but
yeah, but it's not. My understanding is that what you're talking about isn't just for dispatch. It could be for any.
Well, I'm more intimately involved with dispatch. Is that the 34,000, and that whole thing was set up.
I understand. That's why I say it's a two-part question, though. What comes out of capital reserves generally, and then specifically, are the other towns paying their fair share? That's what I hear you saying.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Those are good. Two reasonable questions.
Thank you.
Others? Okay. Chief Cobb, you are free to listen to Chief Lyon or to go home. Chief Lyon? We are now back on page 9. Budget Committee. Good evening. Thanks, Janet. So I tend to talk loudly. Is that okay? Thank you for having us. Like Chief Cobb, some of the items in the first few sections of our budget are based upon our finance director. Certainly the full-time salaries. The New London Fire Department currently has 3 full-time firefighters. Each one of our firefighters, the career firefighters, work 4 10-hour shifts. We also have a part-time employee, Jenna Edmonds, who works 3 8-hour shifts. We're able to cover the hours of Monday through Friday from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., contingent upon vacations, trainings, whatever the case may be. We are also supplemented by a total of 10 officers. So myself as the chief, we have a deputy chief, 2 captains, 5 lieutenants, and a safety officer. Each one of these individuals takes call and covers from 7 p.m. until 7 a.m. I'd just like to recognize Lieutenant Quinn Miller, who's here in the audience this evening. Quinn is covering this evening, and so he will continue his shift this evening and relieve Firefighter Edmonds tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. My point being bringing this up is that the reason why we have full-time firefighters is to make it as easy as possible for the volunteers to be volunteers. So by Quinn Miller being on call this evening, he can deal with the various incidents that come up that are contingent or sort of non-emergent. So in the last week, we've had over 30 calls, and out of those 30 calls, only 5 of them have been general alarms, meaning that we've needed the entire company for. Like we had a rollover yesterday with an extrication on the interstate. You need more hands than just Jay Lyons showing up or Mike Mathieu or Jenna Edmonds, whatever the case may be. So the first line item, full-time salaries, that's based upon our finance director. Part-time wages is an increase this year, increase of almost $20,000. How did I come up with that? So Jenna Edmonds, as I had mentioned, works 3 8-hour shifts. You multiply her hourly wage by 52 weeks, and she's right in the vicinity of $29,000. The other call pay or part-time wages, the remainder of our 42 firefighters are considered part-time employees for the town of New London. So these individuals show up for the various calls. Here in town, we receive anywhere from 800 to 1,000, nominally speaking, calls on an annual basis. But we're able to temper that down to right around an average of 150 a year. And the important thing about that is, yes, it's a cost savings to the town, but really it's management of individuals so that we have adequate response for calls when we need sort of all hands on deck. So 150 times out of the year, on average, we're looking for 15 firefighters to show up.
based upon their hourly compensation at roughly $20 an hour. I figure that right around an average of 2 hours per call. Sometimes we're at 8 hours at a building fire, or we could be 45 minutes at a motor vehicle accident. That comes out to right around $90,000, and hence the request for 120 this year. Last year, we were grateful enough, the membership was grateful enough to receive a slight increase, which was certainly beneficial. And please stop me anytime to inquire about anything. On-call pay. So I'd mentioned Lieutenant Miller being on call this evening. Currently, he's getting compensated $40 for the 12-hour shift that he's taking, or that he's on call. And this year, we'd like to increase that by an 83-cent increase, so hopefully $50 an hour starting next July 1st. And then it's also would be $100 a weekend, so hence the increase to $24,000 from the current $19,800. And as I said, certainly the on-call system is beneficial because it reduces cost to the town, but more importantly, we can have more firefighters turn out as opposed to sort of quote-unquote being burned out. Many towns around us are looking to a similar model that the New London Fire Department, or the town New London, has used very successfully for nearly 20 years, more than 20 years now. In fact, the Sunapee Fire Department they're currently putting in 4 bunk rooms in their station for overnight coverage, which is kind of interesting. Let's see, 130's my salary, overtime wages. That's based upon the full-time employees coming back or taking call pay. So certainly every year with the on-call pay, that isn't used every year. And the reason for that is I take call on the weekends. I'm a salaried employee, so that doesn't get factored in. Lieutenant Bartlett takes at least a night a week for being on call. That goes towards overtime wages as opposed to the on-call wages. However, if he decides that he can't do it, or in this case, Quinn's covering for Corey, who's on vacation, we need to have funds available to supplement those full-time employees. The remainder, 110 through 290, is all covered under the finance director. Before we move on to the operating budget, are there any questions that I might be able to answer?
I think, Jay, that you really only have 2 or 3 big items here that you just need to hit us with. And
do you want me to skip over the level funding stuff? Or
it's all right with everybody. I think that's pretty straightforward. You just go to the maintenance items.
Okay. So some of the biggest increases, vehicle repair and maintenance, and the ladder truck was just serviced. DeSorcy up in just north of Burlington serviced it, as well as Reed's. Those are the 2 companies that we primarily use. Just that piece of apparatus is right around the 5,000 range. We have 4 main pieces of apparatus: our ladder truck, which is the Quint. We have engine 1, engine 2, and our tanker. You consider each one being right around the $4,000 to $5,000 range, as well as our support vehicles of Car 1, Car 2, and the utility. Hence the reason for the increase of $26,200. You also look historically at what we've spent. Certainly there was a more significant increase last year of over $10,000, and the reason for that was the aging engine 2 and some repairs that needed to be done to the other pieces of apparatus. So, you know, I hate to say just because everything's increasing that we should increase this line item, but when I do a breakdown from a zero-based budget, and I'm happy to share any of my figures with the select board or budget committee members, it comes out to $26,150. I would like to just mention some line items that haven't been spent, mainly radio repair for radios from last fiscal year, and that would be line item 613. And part of the reason why that wasn't spent, as well as uniforms and safety equipment, we were grateful to have the select board allocate some funds along with the police department for a highway sign that we'll use for the Halloween evening. But we received some funds to purchase some radio equipment as well as personal protective equipment. So those will be used as matching funds, so they've been encumbered to next year. The other main increase was fuel, and although I'd like to say that we should park the vehicles and be frugal as far as when we go out or when we don't go out, I think that training is an important part of what we do, and with the significant turnover, and what I really should do is present maybe a spreadsheet of how many members we had on the force 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, and incrementally, it's amazing. One of the main, and I always talk about the preparedness, the code compliance aspect of things, but training is hugely important for us. And although the last few years with COVID, some of the members haven't been able to do as much training as they would like, certainly in-house training is super important. And so we have a crew, especially for our trainee people, our probationary firefighters, going through on a weekly basis to get them up to speed to be reliable members. So we do use our apparatus a fair amount. What we had budgeted last year was fully used, and I would only expect that with the increase of fuel prices this past spring and then the forecasted increases for this winter, that unfortunately would be right around in that range. The other would be uniforms and safety equipment, line item 681. And we've seen an increase. I think when I first joined in 91, to outfit a firefighter was right around $800. Now just our jacket and pants, not including gloves, helmet, hoods, blah, 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 is now over $3,000. So we, on an annual basis, purchase 4 sets of gear, and those 4 sets of gear went up several $100s, and just our gear alone is the reason why we went from the $19,500 to the $20,500 range, because they went up $500 a piece.
So, Jay, are you saying that, hopefully you can, are you saying that you, on a rotation basis, you always retire 4 sets? Thank you.
Yeah, with 45 firefighters, we do. And the other thing that's difficult is I'm a little bit taller, a little bit wider from a shoulder perspective. We do have members like our town administrator, and the beneficial thing about having a member like Kim would be when we go to a motor vehicle accident, it's great to have someone that's able to get into a vehicle and be able to provide patient care.
Thank you, Chief. I take that as a compliment. Thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. But with that being said, she can't wear my old gear. So we're very grateful to have individuals that tend to be a little taller to being shorter. So not all fire gear fits everyone, but it's also only good for 10 years. What we'll do is, Quinn may be a good interior firefighter. I may be just a driver. And so although my gear needs to meet standard, because of the number of fires that Quinn's going to, because of the training, because of the wear and tear, and fortunately him being around, we may rotate his gear every 5 years as opposed to someone like myself who I'm going to rotate my gear every 10 years. So in fact, many fire companies, because of the issues with cancer, they're issuing 2 sets of gear per firefighter. And the reason for that is the carcinogens that are produced, and certainly we don't go to, let's face it, out of our 850 to 1,000 calls a year, we only have 3 to 4 or 5 building fires in town. We'll go mutual aid more often, 20 to 30 building fires in town. Mutual aid fires outside of town. But we could go to a call or incident like a cooking-related incident up at Colby Sawyer where they're cooking, let's say, Easy Mac, and they don't put water in. Well, the toxic smoke that's produced out of the plastics, we're still wearing our air packs. Cancer is an absolute epidemic in the fire service. I don't know what the statistics now are as far as males and prostate cancer. Firefighters, 117% greater chance of contracting various cancers, and there's 14 cancers that are directly correlated with the byproducts of combustion and our exposure. So, including our fire gear, unfortunately, with the studies and the PFAS that are being put into the gear to be fireproof or fire resistant. I could go on for a long time about gear, I'm sorry.
Budget Committee members, any questions for the Chief? John, of course, go ahead. It's lucky you sat up front tonight.
Yeah, right. So Jay, I'm learning a lot about aging myself. You talk about our aging fleet. I know this isn't exactly the appropriate night to be talking about a bit more.
Sure.
But should we be re-examining our capital reserve for you?
So fortunately, last year we did. I think we came up with a great alternative. Instead of putting significant amount of funds in the budget for last year for the acquisition of Engine 2, at the last town meeting, we voted and approved the replacement of Engine 2, which at that time, I'm not sure the exact date that we signed, but it was 240 days from the date that we signed. So let's say that was in May. It's probably going to be here, hopefully before I retire, in a couple of few years. But that acquisition, we used money on an annual basis to pay I think it was $116,000, $119,000 lease to own option, but we're also setting aside right around $100,000 for future acquisitions. That's for a 5-year note, and so the next piece to be replaced would be the tanker. And then, if you can believe it, John, because I think you were on the budget committee when we purchased our ladder, that will be up in 10 years. It's hard to believe.
Okay, so
we have sufficient funding in the capital reserve.
We're going to get to capital reserves on the 27th, John.
Yeah.
Across the board.
I know it was a little out of schedule there.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Thank you, Chief.
We still have fire wards.
Fire ward?
Fire wards, sorry. Oh my God, that's out of my list here. Steve, are you going to speak to that, or?
I think I can.
I don't think we need a long discussion.
I can probably. This year, I believe it's level funded.
Page 10, top of it.
Yep.
Same $292.
It's pretty heavy. And so that's really for our clerk to record the minutes. The Board of Fire Wards usually meets every other month, contingent upon what's going on. Sometimes it's every month, and so those funds are used to compensate our clerk.
Okay, so you may, thank you, appreciate that.
Thank you.
We'll give Lou a chance to speak to the emergency management budget, and then we are done for the evening.
I'm not Jason, no.
You've got no mic, so you better speed it up.
Yeah. Okay, good evening. It's a pleasure to be here, actually on the other side of the desk. But, emergency management, as you notice, we are, reducing it 34%. Over the last 2 years, what wound up happening is we have been basically reeling in from probably the, a very unanticipated pandemic. There are certain items that are stable. We're talking, for example, equipment maintenance, the hazmat fee. Where am I here? Okay. 11. 10, I'm sorry. Okay. The hazmat fee that it was not collected for 2 years, and now it is. But other than that, what wound up happening is we stopped purchasing pretty much anything in understanding that in the first year we didn't even know if we were going to have a federal disaster declaration, which came in. We did purchase items which were reimbursed. And on the second year, we didn't know at which time we were going to have to take PPE and emergency supplies at high. So we pretty much did not purchase much. And what wound up happening is on February 3rd of this year, then the president not only did he double down on the disaster declaration, but he also decreed that we had a 100% reimbursement for all expenses relating to the disaster. So we didn't spend a lot, but we took a lot of supplies from the state, and they were free of charge to the town. So that's why you will see where some of the items are non-spent. Having said that, we have been able to build up a community emergency response team. We have accumulated if you remember 5 years ago, I told you that we were going to start on building up a supply of meals ready to eat in case of activation of a shelter and for emergency operations in case of, for continuity of government. And we've pretty much completed that. So the result is of that, we're not going to be purchasing anymore for probably the next 2 years. So those are sitting in storage, and will, it'll be at the command of the town administrator or the selectmen that we will start drawing on those.
Okay, so that's pretty straightforward. There's nothing like having a budget that goes down this much, right? Or starts from zero and doesn't go up very much. Anybody in the budget committee have any? Oh, Janet, you have any questions? Anybody on the budget committee? Anybody else in the audience? Thank you, Lou. Thank you for all that you do for us on a volunteer basis. Appreciate it. It's an important service that we get from you and your long experience, and I'm glad to see you're not in Florida. Okay, so having said that, then I think we are done for the budget until the 27th of October, at which point we will do the rest of the operating accounts from town clerk to library to recreation, et cetera, and we will pick up capital reserve funds and the CIP. So hopefully we'll be able to get through all of those in one night. If we don't, we'll carry it over to the 3rd of November. So for the Budget Committee's purposes, we've got the 27th of October, the 3rd of November, and maybe the 10th of November. Okay? Hearing nothing else, any other business? Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second, all in favor? Aye. Thank you.